Okay, we are good. We've got a live on the Boxcast and for the synagogue website. There. And we're good. We're good across the board. And we've got music. Nice volume. I'm going to mute now and stop talking.
אשיר על השם כי גמל עליי אשיר על השם אשיר על השם אשיר על השם כי גמל עליי ואני בחסדך פתחתי יגל ליבי בישועתך ואני בחסדך פתחתי יגל ליבי בישועתך אשיר על השם אשיר על השם אשיר על השם כי גמל עליי אשיר על השם אשיר על השם אשיר על השם כי גמל עליי אשיר על השם אשיר על השם אשיר על השם אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם כי גמל עליי אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם כי גמל עליי אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם, אשיר על השם כי גמל עליי אשיר על השם אשיר על השם אשיר על השם כי אשיר על השם חנוננו מערב יבוא שבתנו מבוקר ויראה רינו שוותנו מבוקר יראה רינוננו יעלה קולנו מערב צורכם כמו באהבת נעים שמכם ולא יושבת שבו ונוחו ביום שבת לראש נביא ואולמי ואות ישעשה עמי נטע שורק בתוך כרמי שוי שבת בני עמי דרור יקרא לבן אימת וינצוחם כמו באהבת נעים שמכם ולא יושבת שבו נוחו ביום שבת דרור יקרא לבן אימת וינצוחם כמו באהבת נעים שמכם ולא יושבת שבו נוחו ביום שבת דרוך פורה בתוך בוצרה וגם בבל אשר גברה נטוץ צרי בעברה שמה קולי ביום אקרא אלוקים תן במדבר הר הדס שיטה בראש תדהר ולמזהיר ולנזהר שלא ממתן כמי נהר דרור יקרא לבן אימת וינצוחם כמו באהבת נעים שמכם ולא יושבת שגובלוכו ביום שבת דרור יקרא לבן אימת וינצוחם כמו באהבת נעים שמכם
Boker Tov, Shana Tova. I have to tell you, it is very lovely to see other people's faces. As nice as I think the service was yesterday, it's very nice to see people's unmasked faces. And I am going to ask people, if you're comfortable, if you could put your camera on so we can see each other. I understand that doesn't work for everybody, but I'd like to encourage people to do that so we have more of a community feel. We begin our service with Modeh Ani and, of course, the beautiful video that the cantor prepared with Ariana Schiff.
שחזרת בי נשמתי, שחזרת בי נשמתי, בחמלה, בחמלה, רב אהונתך, בחמלה, בחמלה, רב אהונתך. שחזרת בי נשמתי, שחזרת בי נשמתי, שחזרת בי נשמתי, שחזרת בי נשמתי, בחמלה, בחמלה, רב אהונתך, בחמלה, Moshe נשמתי, שחזרת בי נשמתי, בחמלה, בחמלה, רבה אהונתך, בחמלה, בחמלה, רבה אהונתך.
We continue with Matovu. Wow. I don't know, hearing Jen's beautiful voice on the high holidays, I just said to Dan, nothing quite says Rosh Hashanah like Jen's beautiful voice. She was part of our choir when she was a teenager before my time. The cantor was able to recruit her and get her back even though she lived out of state. And she hasn't been able to be with us for the last couple of years. So to have her back and part of it is really special. We continue with Birkot HaShachar on page 84. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasech vivena lahavchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שעשני בצלמו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בן חורין. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, פוקח עברים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, זוקף כפופים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, רוקע הארץ על המים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשה לי כל צורכי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר הכין מצעדי גבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עוזר ישראל בגבורה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עוטר ישראל בתפארה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, הנותן ליעף כוח. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המעביר שינה מעיני ותנומה מעפעפיי. ותננו היום ובכל יום לכנו חסד ורחמים, בעיניך ובנכרנו ותגמלנו חסדים טובים. ברוך אתה אדוני גומל חסדים טובים לעמו Yisrael. Turn now to page 100 for Baruch Shamar. Please remain standing. Baruch Shamar v'haya haolam Baruch hu. Baruch hu sevreshit. Baruch omer v'yoseh. Baruch gozerum kayem. Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireyav, Baruch halad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch podeh matzil, Baruch shemo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ha'el ha'varachaman hamulal b'fi amo, Mishubach umfor b'lshon chasidav avadav, U'shirei David avdecha, Nehalelcha Adonai Eloheinu, bishvachot uvizmirot, Negadelcha unshabechacha unfeircha, v'nazkir shimcha v'namlichecha, Malkeinu Eloheinu, Yachid Haolamim, Melech Mishubach umforad yad Shemo Agadol, Baruch Ata Adonai, Melech Mehulal Batishbachot. You may be seated and turn to page 125 for Psalm 148. Adonai min hashamayim, Hallelujah b'miromim, Hallelujah chol malachav, Hallelujah kol tzivav, Hallelujah, Shemesh v'Reach, Hallelujah, Kol Kochvei Or. Hallelujah, Shmei Hashemayim v'Amayim, Hashem me'al Hashemayim. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki Yitziva v'Nirah, v'Yamidim Le'olam, Chok Natan v'Lo Yavor. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki Yitziva v'Nirah, v'Yamidim Le'olam, Chok Natan v'Lo Yavor. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Adonai min hashamayim. Hallelujah, b'miromim. Hallelujah, chol malachah. Hallelujah, kol tzivah. Hallelujah, shemesh v'reach. Hallelujah, kol kochvei or. Hallelujah, shmei hashemayim v'amayim, Hashem me'al hashemayim. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki Yitziva v'Nirah, v'Yamidim Le'olam, Chok Natan v'Lo Yavor. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki Yitziva v'Nirah, v'Yamidim Le'olam, Chok Natan v'Lo Yavor. Hallelujah. We now turn to page 130. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. נעלה לך נשבחך ונפארך נברך את שם קודשך כאמור. לדוד ברכי נפשי נא לכל קרבה את שם קודשו. האל בתעצומות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך. We continue on page 134. המלך יושב על כיסא רם ונישא, שוכן עד מר מקדוש שמה, וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני לישרים נבטלה, בפי ישרים תתרומם ובדברי צדיקים תתברך. ובלשון חסידים תתקדש, ובקרב קדושים תתהלל, ובמקלות רבבות המכבד ישראל. שכן חובת כל היצורים לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל, לקלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוכה בשירי זמרה, מלך אלכי העולמים. On page 138. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצר אור וחושך, עושה שלום ובורא הכל. עולם ביצרך מורות מעופר, עמה ויהי. We continue on page 145. המאיר לצפרים אל הברחמים. (146) תתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו. כולם אהובים, כולם בריאים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים עבר רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה ותורה בשירה וזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים, ומריצים ומקדישים, וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור ונורא הקדוש הוא, וכולם מקבלים עליהם מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש יוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה, ובנימה הקדושה כולם כאחד, עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך הארץ כבודו, והאופנים בחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מתנשאים להם הצרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו. Lael Baruch Nimod Yitenu 148. Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir v'nizkechu lanamir al yoro Baruch Ata Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot. Page 150. Avarabav Tanu Adonai Eloheinu Chem Lagidol Lavitera Hamalta Leinu Avinu Malkeinu Bavur Avoteinu Shebatchu V'cha Avinu Malkeinu V'telamdem Chukechayim Kein Tchaneinu Lamdeinu Avinu Avarachaman Amrachem Rachem Aleinu V'ten B'libeinu Lehavin Lehavinu L'haski Lishma Lilmad U'lelamed Lishmor V'lasot U'lekayem et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha B'yava V'ha'elenu B'toratecha V'rabeg Lebeinu B'mitzvotecha V'yached Levaveinu L'yahava U'yira et Shemecha V'lo nevash Le'olam aved V'lo nevash Le'olam aved Ki v'shem kodshecha Hagadol v'yanora b'tachnu Nagila v'nismecha Nagila v'nismecha b'yishuatecha V'avienu l'shalom Me'arba kanfot haaretz V'tolnichenu komemiut Komemiut le'atzeinu Ki apal yeshuarata Uvanu v'chata mikodam b'lashon V'keraftanu Shimacha gadol Selah Be'emet Lehodot lecha U'liacherecha b'yava Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'amo Yisrael b'yava. Please turn to page 154 for the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאותה ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Continue silently, page 156. Now we chant Vayomer, page 158. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, Dabir el bnei Israel v'amata lehem, v'yasrem tzitzit, al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam, v'nanu al tzitzit, hakanal petil techelet, והיה לכם לציצית, וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו, ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. לדור ודור הוא קיים בשמו כמחיסון אחון, ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת, ודבריו חיים וקיימים, נאמנים ונחמדים לעד. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גואל גואל אבותינו יצרנו צור ישועתנו, פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. 160 עזרת אבותינו מעולם. Page 162. Tehilot le'elyon baruch umvorach, Moshe v'nei Yisrael chanu shira, b'simcha rabba, v'yamru chulam, mi chamocha b'lim Adonai, mi kamocha niraba kodesh, nora tehilot osei fele, shira chadasha shibchu gelin mishimcha, svarayam, יחד כולם הודו וימלכו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Please rise. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ובדרך נמך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. We continue with the Amidah on page 164, preceded by Adonai Sfatai Tiftach and a video.
שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Nice.
Continue with Yamida, page 164. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Hayel Hagadol Hagibor Vehanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Vekoneh HaKol Vizocheh Chostei Avot Umevi Goel Livanei Vanem Leman Shemo B'yavah Misod Chachamim Unevonim Umilemedad Mevinim Eftechafi Bitfila V'tachanunim Lechalot Ulchanein Pnei Melech Malchei Amlachim V'Adonai Adonim Zachrenu Lechaim Melech Hafetz B'chaim V'chotvenu B'sefer HaChaim Lemancha Elohim Chaim Melech Ozer Ufoked Umoshia Umagen Ufoked Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechaye Metim Ata Rav Leoshia Mechakel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye Metim Berachamim Erabim Somech Noflim Verofech Olim Umatir Asurim Kayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Bal Givurot Umido Melach Melech Memit Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua mi chamocha av harachamim zoche yitzurav lechaim berachamim v'ne'emanat halachayot metim baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hametim. We turn now to page 170. Uvechein lecha hakoyati leil oreich din levochein levavot yom din legol le'amukot vadin ledover mesharin b'yom din legaredeyot vadin levatik b'yosef esen yom din lezocher berito vadin lechomer masav b'yom din letaer usavadin leodei amachashavot b'yom din lechovesh kasot vadin lelovesh tzedakot b'yom din lemochel avonot vadin lenora tehilot b'yom din lesoleach lamusaf vadin leoneh lekorach b'yom din lefoel rachamav vadin letzofen istarot b'yom din lekoneh avadav vadin lerachem amo b'yom din v'shomer ohavav vadin letomer temimav b'yom din. Please continue silently with the Amida.
Now it says,
For those of you that have completed the Amidah, we continue with Avinu Malkeinu, of course, because yesterday was Shabbat, we were not able to hear it. So it's such a signature prayer of the high holiday season, and we will have both the traditional singing of it, but first a beautiful video of our choir. We're on page 184.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Kotzar, Umasti, Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kadesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu, Shema Koleinu. Shema Koleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Vaneinu, Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vaneinu, Vaneinu. Yen Manu Masim, Asei Manu, Tzedakah v'chesed. Asei Manu, Tzedakah v'chesed, Le'oshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vaneinu, Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vaneinu, Vaneinu. Yen Manu Masim, Asei Manu, Tzedakah v'chesed. Asei Manu, Tzedakah v'chesed, v'Hoshienu. Oseh Shalom bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, Ve'imru Amen. shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru
We're going to hear the Torah read today. We have volunteers who are going to be reading at home from a Chumash, not from a Torah scroll. But this is a really significant Torah reading. It is the story of the binding of Isaac, a story hopefully that over the years is quite familiar to us. But after Abraham and Sarah have been promised a beloved son, and that the line will continue through this son, and finally in their old age are granted the blessing of the birth of Isaac, we're told later on, of course, that Abraham is commanded to take this very son and to sacrifice him in a place that God will show him. It is a story that has kept the imagination of Jews for thousands of years. Many generations of interpretation, both very sympathetic to Abraham, sympathetic, of course, to Isaac, critical of Abraham, critical of Isaac. It's a story that we have grappled with, and I'm sure we'll continue to grapple with in the ages to come. And so our first Torah reader this morning, I'll tell you the Torah reading is on page, second day Torah reading.
220.
I'm sorry, what is it?
220.
Thank you very much, page 220. And our first Torah reader is Jonah Greenthal.
ויהי אחר הדברים האלה והאלוהים נישא את אברהם ויאמר אליו אברהם ויאמר הנני ויאמר קח נא את בנך את יחידך אשר אהבת את יצחק ולך לך אל ארץ המוריה והעלהו שם לעולה אל אחד ההרים אשר אומר אליך וישכם אברהם בבוקר ויחבוש את חמורו ויקח את שני נעריו איתו ואת יצחק בנו ויבקע עולה ויקום וילך אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים.
Yesher Koach. Thank you, Jonah. We now continue with the second Aliyah with Rod Lowenthal.
ביום השלישי וישא אברהם את עיניו וירא את המקום מרחוק ויאמר אברהם אל נעריו שבו לכם פה עם החמור ואני והנער נלכה עד כה ונשתחווה ונשובה עליכם ויקח אברהם את עצי העולה וישם על יצחק בנו ויקח בידו את האש ואת המחלק, וילכו שניהם יחדיו, ויאמר יצחק אל אברהם אביו, ויאמר אביו, ויאמר הנני בני, ויאמר הנה האש והעצים, ויעשה לעולה, ויאמר אברהם אלוהים, ירא לא עשה לעולה בני, וילכו שניהם יחדיו.
Thank you, Rod. We now continue with a Mishaberach, a prayer for all who are suffering illness. And this morning we have the beautiful video that was pre-recorded by Rob Simon.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mikol Abraham Livotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikol Abraham liavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We continue with the third Aliyah, Tracy Lowenthal.
Vayavo el hamakom asher amar lo ha'Elohim. Vayiven sham Avraham et hamizbeach vayaroch et ha'etzim. Vayakod et Yitzhak beno vayasem oto el hamizbeach mima'al ha'etzim. Vayishlach Avraham et yado vayikach hama'achelet lishchot et beno. Vayikra elav malach Adonai min hashamayim, vayomer Avraham Avraham, vayomer hineni, vayomer al tishlach yadcha el hana'ar, ve'al ta'aslo me'uma, ki ata yadati, ki yirei Elohim ata, velo chasavta, et bincha et yehidecha mimeni. Vaysavraham et einav vayar vehine ayel va'ahar ve'echaz basvach ve'karna vayelech Avraham ve'yikach et ha'ayel ve'ya'alehu le'olah tachat beno. Vayikra Avraham shem hamakom hahu Adonai yireh asher ye'amer hayom Bihar Adonai Yera'eh.
Yasher Koach, thank you, Tracy. We continue with the fourth Aliyah with Cheryl Dworkin.
Amen. Vayikra Malach Adonai el Avraham Shenit min hashamayim vayomer v'nishbati ne'um Adonai כי יען אשר עשית את הדבר הזה ולא חסכת את בנך את יחידך, תברך אברכך והרבה את זרעך ככוכבי השמיים וככל אשר על שפת הים, וירש זרעך את שעריו ויתברכו בזרעך כל גויי הארץ עקב אשר שמעת בקולי. וישב אברהם אל נעריו ויקומו וילכו יחדיו אל באר שבע, וישב אברהם בבאר שבע.
Yasher Koach. We continue with the final Aliyah with Kate Feinstein.
ויהי אחרי הדברים האלה, ויגד לאברהם לאמור, הנה ילדה מילכה גם היא, בנים לנחור אחיך, את עוץ בכורו ואת בוז אחיו, ואת כמואל אבי ארם, ואת כסד ואת הזו, ואת פילדש ואת ידלב, ואת בתואל, ובתואל ילד את רבקה, שמונה אלה ילדה מיקה, לנחור אחי אברהם, ופילגשו ושמה ראומה, ותלד גם היא את טבע ואת גהם, ואת תש ואת מעכה.
Yasher Koach to Kate and to all of our Torah readers. Beautiful Torah reading today. We continue with Ashrei on page 250.
Ashrei, Yoshvei, V'techa, Od Yalelucha, Od Yalelucha. Hashivenu Adonai lecha, Hashivenu v'nashuva Chodesh, Chodesh, Chodesh Yameinu Kekedim Chodesh, Chodesh Yameinu Kekedim Hashivenu Adonai lecha, Hashivenu v'nashuva Chodesh, Chodesh, Chodesh Yameinu Kekedim Chodesh, Chodesh Yameinu
we continue with the Hineni prayer on page 279.
Hineni, hey, ani, mimas, nirash v'nifchad mipachad yosef, Yosef, Tilod Yisrael, Bati lamod litchanen lefanech al amcha Yisrael, Asher shilachoni, אף על פי שניחני ויגון לכך, לכן אבקש ממך, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל, ואלוהי לאה. Adonai, Adonai, Rachmech Hanon, Eloi Yisrael, Shaddai, Ayom Benora. Heyein amatzliach darki, Ashani olech, Lamor ulvakesh rachamim alai, V'yal sholachai, Nal tavshim b'chatotai, V'yal techayvim b'avonotai, Ki chotei ufosheani, V'yal yikamu b'ifshai, V'yal yevoshu heim bi, V'yal yevoshani b'hem. Kabel tefilati, ki tfilot zaken veragil, ufikonae, uzkana megudal, vekolonae, umorabedat, Briot, Vihi nadilugenu alechava, V'Yaakov shaim tchaseh v'yava, Kol tzarot v'raot hafachna lanu, Ulecha Yisrael, L'sason l'simcha, L'chaim u'l'shalom, Hamet v'yashalom e'avu, v'lo yehishu mechshol b'tefilati.
Shana Tova. It's just lovely to be with all of you on this Rosh Hashanah morning. I want to conduct today a little bit less like a sermon and a little bit more like a Devar Torah / study session. I don't know how many of you remember that last year I shared Israeli poetry with you on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and people seemed to really like that. So I brought you some more this morning. And it's poetry that really emphasizes the idea that I'm going to call it the magic of the Hebrew language, but it's poetry that focuses on the idea of crisis as a time of opportunity. And it's based on the Hebrew word mashber. The Hebrew word mashber means crisis. So in common spoken Hebrew, when people use that word, the word refers, the translation is crisis. But the word itself has a root, which is shin beit resh, that actually has a multiplicity of meanings. It's an ancient word, it's an ancient root, and this word shows up in the Torah and in the Bible in many different ways. And so I want to sort of unpack a little bit together sort of the magic of this word to better understand how it's then used in these poems. So what it really is saying, what this word is really saying, and I hope that I will prove it to you by showing how it's used in the Bible, is that the same root for the word crisis also is the same word that's used for a great breaking open of opportunity. So in the root of the word crisis also comes the root for the word of potential and growth and birth and opportunity. Or to quote Rahm Emanuel, who grew up in the congregation, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. So I loved this idea that particularly at a time like this, when we feel that we're very much in a crisis situation, we feel that we're in a crisis situation because we're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. We certainly feel the sense of the crisis situation as we all are at home trying to keep ourselves safe in the face of this very frightening disease that we're all quite concerned that we don't want to catch. We are certainly we know that we're in a crisis every day when we see the numbers of death growing every single day in this country, the unbelievable loss of human life, and the amount of sickness, even from the people that are sick but recover, the disruption to our entire way of life, to our economy, our children that are unable, many of them, to attend school, our college students who are, if they're home, can't be away, which is terrible. And if they're away, the worry that they are exposed and they're going to get sick. And then for many of us, just the general anxiety about so many other things that are happening in our country, and the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think for many of us, fueling that sense of anxiety and crisis. Nonetheless, in Hebrew, the idea is that even at the time of crisis, there could be a great breaking open that will enable us to see the world in a new way, to grow, to learn, and to be not just the same people that we were before, but better people than we were before. And of course, the potential for a better world. So I want to read you actually a poem, not by a Hebrew author, a poem by our very own American Emily Dickinson, before we look at some of the use of this word in the Bible. And then I will put the poems that we're going to focus on up on the screen so you'll be able to read them together with me. So Emily Dickinson: there is strength in proving that it can be borne, although it tear. What are the sinews of such cordage for accept to bear? The ship might be of satin, had it not to fight. To walk on seas requires cedar's feet, right? So that there is strength in proving that it can be borne. I find that sentence incredibly inspirational at a moment like this. I try to think about that a lot during these difficult times, is what will it mean when it's all over to be able to say, this is how we got through this, right? This is how we got through this with our courage and our strength and our humanity. And while we would have preferred, Harold Kushner in his famous book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, the best part of the book is the introduction to the book. This book came out of his terrible tragedy of losing his son at a young age to illness. And he said, I would have given everything to trade all of the wisdom that I learned. I would have traded it all for my son to be alive, but as human beings, we're not given that choice. So of course, we would have preferred not to have to learn what it means to live under a quarantine for all of these months. But the question of how did we bear it and the stories that we will tell about that when it's over. And anyways, back to the Bible and this root shin bet resh. It means on some level, in the book of Isaiah, the quote is, "There are two things that are befallen thee, desolation and destruction." So in that verse, that root means destruction. You could see why chaos might come from this idea of destruction, and it's used that way several times in the Bible. In the book of Exodus, when Moses hurls down the stones after the sin of the golden calf, and he throws down the stones, the tablets are broken, and so the word also means, the root of the word means broken. So it can mean destruction, it can mean a breaking, it can mean a shattering, but it also can mean, and it does in the book of Isaiah, it says that God binds up the breach of his people. It can also mean a breach as well. But later on in the Bible, in the book of Isaiah, the word mashber means the moment in the birth process, when the woman is dilated enough that she begins to push the baby out. So it's a very specific moment. It comes for most women after a great deal of pain, the transition from the dilation to the moment of pushing. So it's not quite the birth moment, but it's the moment of transition. It's the moment of ultimate opening and the beginning of the active participation of birthing. So that is quite a different image of this word, right? Not to say that this may not feel like a chaotic breaking to a woman that's experiencing it, but it's also the moment where the woman is able, hopefully, God willing, is able to become a more active participant in pushing out a baby. And so you can see built into the use of the word at that moment, it transitions from the idea of something that is just negative and bad to the something that changes the word into a great deal of potential of this moment awaiting the birth. And Rashi, which is a much later commentator on the Torah, the word for him, mashber, refers to the birthing stool. So it actually becomes not just a moment in the birthing process, but the stool that a woman that would sit on to give birth historically and in earlier times was called the mashber. So in Rashi's time, it was not used to refer to a crisis. It was used to refer to an instrument that was used for the birthing of new life. But also mishbarei, if you know the phrase mishbarei yam, it's also used in our tradition to talk about the breaking of waves. So not the physical breaking or shattering, but when a wave breaks on the shore, the word has the same root. And then most interestingly, the word is also used in the story of Joseph. We know that what does Joseph do? Joseph collects all the grain, right? He knows that a famine is coming, so he collects the grain for the good years. And then when the famine begins, and he is able to give out this grain, when Jacob and his sons are suffering from the famine back in the land of Israel, they hear that Egypt has food, that Egypt has grain, and the word in the Torah is shever. So it's not used in the word of breaking, it's not used in the word of birthing, it's now used as sustenance, right? The ability to have food, and the storehouses are called mashbir. For those of you that have ever spent time in Israel and you know that there's a major department store, I see Cheryl Dworkin, I can see her on my screen, I see she's smiling. The mashbir was like the Marshall Fields of Israel. It was right in the middle of downtown Jerusalem, and I had never known until I studied these sources. Mashbir, it comes from this root. So department store that has all of these products comes from the same root. So you see, I've now kind of led you through the idea that a crisis can be, or the root can mean crisis, it can mean destruction, it can mean breaking, it can mean birthing, and it can mean the abundance of enough. So it's fascinating that one word in Hebrew can have all of these different connotations. And so now I want to share with you just 3 Hebrew modern poems. I'm going to share my screen because I think it's easier to understand them when you can actually see them. I don't like having necessarily, I'm not so good at having things read to me and understand. So these are all modern poems dealing with these themes of the moment where a crisis also becomes potential. So our first author that we're going to look at is a gentleman by the name of Yechezkel Rachamim. He's a native of the city of Jaffa. He began his literary career after completing his military service and during a 2-year journey in Latin America. For those of you that know Israeli culture, you might know that after you finish your army service, it's incredibly common to go out on a journey. For many, many years, India was the popular place to go. It then transitioned to South America. When Dan and I had the privilege of being in Argentina 2 years ago, we went to this little town, El Chalten, which is at the foot of one of the great mountains and popular hiking mountains of Argentina. So this little town, I don't know, Dan, how many Israelis were in this town?
See, more Israelis than non-Israelis.
All we heard was Hebrew. There were 20-something Israelis that populated this entire town. I said to Dan, is anybody left in like Tel Aviv? So, all right, I'll tell. Dan wants me to tell you the story about this. This has nothing to do with anything. This is so totally off topic.
That's very good.
But there were so many Israelis there that when we were hiking, the outhouse had signs about how to dispose of your garbage in Spanish, English, and I think French, and then Hebrew. The English, and Dan could read Spanish, both said, please dispose of your trash. Do not put them in the outhouses. Please pack them out. But the one in Hebrew said, please guard our good names. In the biggest writing, please guard our good names. Do not dispose of the trash in here. Please carry it out. So there was for those people that could speak Hebrew, a really strong message, let's just say about cultural behavior. But in any case, this has nothing to do with this other than I was saying that 2 years in Latin America is not uncommon. This is what Israelis tend to do if they're able after their army service, is to go out on a big journey before they come and settle back in the country. And so it was only after this journey, and it's sort of a journey of finding yourself. It's a journey of freedom after having had to serve, women for 2 years, men for 3 years. It's quite a big commitment, and it's not, it's not fun and games. It's your life is not your own. It belongs to the military. And so this is sort of talk about like a breaking open, right? A breaking open of an experience to be able to go out into the world. And his poetry combined some biographical elements from his life. So the first one that is just a little short one that you can see from enough distance. I fell to my knees to gather shards of a horizon shattered to bits. Only then did I lift my head to inhale into the depths of my heart the entire canopy of stars. And I just thought, that is a beautiful thing to read. Again, at a moment, these moments that we're in, this time that we're in, I shared with you, I think Friday night, how many congregants have said to me over the course of the summer, we're really fine, we're fine, it's hard, but we're fine, and all the things that we're grateful for. But this moment of thinking about falling to your knees, that we're fine, but we're not fine. This summer when Michelle Obama was interviewed and talked about that, there are days she feels really depressed, and we know she's a person who prides herself on, exercise and saying sometimes I can't even exercise, and how that sort of broke something open in the American psyche of people that could say, oh my God, it was such a relief to hear somebody speak those words because it's hard for me to say. It's wonderful to think about, strengthening ourselves and being appreciative for what we have, but at the same time to be able to recognize that this is really hard, even for those of us that have the best situations possible. This is really hard. But the idea that in the falling to your knees and gathering the shards, perhaps, it also gives you the ability to lift your head and to see the canopy of stars, right? That one can maybe lead to the other. And so we're going to look at just one more poem by this gentleman, by Yechezkel Rachamim. What might come after storm and dissolution? In each stage of my life, I am struck by a storm. Uprooting the pieces of tired branches, I am left at the end like an animal cut open, contemplating the lowliest of my bent branches. I stayed through the storms and remained myself. Moreover, due to what is gone, my fear I have lost, and my faith has grown in myself and in God and what God shall send. So, this was not something that was written for COVID. This COVID is certainly not the first time we have faced in our lives tragedies and challenges. That's what it means, to be human. The concept of mashbir as chaos. This is what life is really about. Like right now, there's an incredible difficulty that we're sort of all going through at the same time in some way. But the idea that life brings this kind of chaos and challenge, and how we grow from that, and how sometimes once we've gone through something like that, our faith can also grow out of our ability to deal with it. I heard an interesting story from Micha Goodman, who is a professor of philosophy at Hebrew University, and he's also a Hartman Fellow. I've had the opportunity to study with him both in person and then this summer through Zoom. And he told a story that I thought was really interesting. He said, what in the first lockdown in Israel's entering its second lockdown. In the first lockdown in Israel after COVID, the country was fairly united in their understanding of what was happening and how to deal with it. But he said it was really an incredibly eye-opening experience in Israel because Israel is really used to feeling alone. And the things that they deal with, terrorism, their enemies, all of the things that happens around them, the judgment of other countries, BDS, that Israel has a tremendous sense of whatever they're going through, that they're going through alone, and that it was actually a remarkable experience, he said. And people started writing about this in Israel in the realization that the pandemic was the first time that they felt that they were not suffering something alone, that they were suffering something along with the entire world at the same time. And that for Israelis, that was an incredibly, as difficult as going through COVID was. And their first lockdown, and we'll see what their second lockdown was, quite strict. You were not allowed to leave your house except to go to the grocery store or the pharmacy, and you would be stopped on the way out of your house. It was very common to be stopped and have to show where you were going, or you were sent back into your house. So people couldn't even take their children out to play or out for a walk. So, and Israelis, as you probably know, live in relatively small living spaces. So try to think about sheltering in place with your, family, your young children, and you could never even take your children outside. Rather complicated and difficult. And yet at the same time, sort of their breaking open and their expansiveness was the realization that they were not going through this alone, but it was something they were going through simultaneously with the entire world. The last poem I want to share with you is by a woman by the name of Sivan Harshefi. Dr. Sivan Harshefi has a doctorate from the Department of Hebrew Literature at Bar-Ilan University. She teaches literature and creative writing at the Herzog College. She's an accomplished poet, and she was the Prime Minister Prize Laureate in 2012. She's the author of 3 books. She also happens to be from the religious community. And so the poem I'm bringing you today is called Modeh Ani, I Give Thanks. Modeh Ani is actually a prayer, right? We started our entire service this morning, as we do every morning service, with a prayer, Modeh Ani, where we thank God that we're alive. So you already see sort of the religious ramifications of naming your poem after a prayer, right? Modeh Ani, I Give Thanks. And so you'll see that she uses the reference of mashbir, the word of birthing stool that we saw from Rashi means birthing stool. That's the word when she looks at, that's the way she is going to use this word, mashbir. On these stones of darkness on the birthing stool, causing me to bleat with compassion, which is already an interesting phrase. I don't think many women that are birthing are thinking about the word compassion. But in any case, the word compassion also is an interesting word in Hebrew. Rachamim comes from that root is rechem, which means womb. So there's a connection in Hebrew between a womb and compassion, and then one of the names for God is Harachaman, the compassionate one, or the womb-like one. It's part of my secret plot is to have you fall in love with Hebrew and go, this is so magical. I really should be spending more time studying the Hebrew language. The contraction is a prayer, rhythmic, quick. I descend to the endpoints of mountains, then ascend. All that was closed opens. All that was open now closes. The Siddur, I love that. That's generally, again, you know, I hate to say that only a woman, because I don't really believe that gender reactions are that distinct, but it's fascinating to hear a prayer from a woman who's thinking about a womb opening and closing, compares it then to a Siddur that's opening and closing. The Siddur, for example, lies prostrate. The heart, dilated to 4 fingers, contracts and expands. They're coming on now quicker, no time for words. The cry is the prayer now, that I am like an animal in the forest howling. The heart, dilated to 7 fingers, comes clear. With my fingertips, I am already feeling for the sun that is rising. So again, I love that image of a heart dilating. And what it reminds me of is we've studied, some of us have studied this together in the Parsha over the course of the summer. We know that we have imagery of a heart being circumcised, of, you know, the goal in Judaism is to remove that outer hard, callous layer of a heart to open our heart into compassion. And then in her prayer, the idea of comparing the dilation of a woman's womb, uterus to give birth, comparing it to the dilation of a heart to open and to expand in the prayer that she started with the idea of compassion and the idea of birthing. And so with this, I'd just like to say that I think that is the great challenge of the time we're in. Maybe it's the great challenge of every human being in every time that they're living in. But for those of us that are living through something so unprecedented, Dan likes to quote something that he saw in the newspaper, which is, I'm longing for precedented times. Why does everything have to be unprecedented? Can't we just go through something that's like, we've been through this before, we've got this? But this idea that these unprecedented times, will it allow us to open, to expand with compassion, to take this crisis, to dilate our hearts, and to lead us to becoming better people in the coming year. That's what this time of year is all about, right? Letting go of all these things, becoming better people in the new year, and the hope that we will be able to use that growth and compassion to make our country and our world a better place, not just the same place it was before this all started. So so Shana Tova to everyone. We had originally thought right now that we would break into chat rooms. I'm a little bit concerned about how many people are on live stream, because this will sort of leave them, with a little 10-minute break, which they might actually appreciate. Nancy, I think what we should do is let's leave the chat room to the very end of the service. That way people that want to stay on can stay on. People that are on live stream, maybe this will inspire you to want to sign on to Zoom and join us. And we know that we have the prayer concert with Yoel Sykes starting at 11:30. So people that might want a little bit of a break, I really want to encourage everybody to join us in the prayer concert with Yoel Sykes at 11:30. It is in honor of our beloved Terry Lehman. Her family is sponsoring the concert in honor of her a significant birthday that she celebrated over the course of the summer. So if you'd like to stay on for the end of the service, we will have our chat room. And for now, we will continue with our service. I've got to figure out where we are. Please rise. We continue with the Amidah on page 280. Cantor, we're going to continue with the video 7 for Avot.
Pene
Moshia Umagen Baruch Adonai Baruch Shemo Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechayim Metim Atarav Lehoshia Matzmiach Yeshua Michamocha Avarachamim Zocher Zocher Yetzura L'chaim Berachamim V'nehemanata L'chayot metim Baruch Ata Adonai Baruch Shemo Mechayei hametim
We continue on page 282 with Unatana Tokef. We proclaim the great sanctity of this day, a day filled with awe and trembling. On this day, O God, we sense your dominion as we envision you on the throne of judgment, judging us in truth but with compassion. Unatana Tokef, page 282. The great shofar is sounded, a still small voice is heard. Even the angels are dismayed. In fear and trembling they cry out. The day of judgment has arrived. For even the heavenly hosts feel they are judged and sense they are not without fault. On this day we all pass before you one by one like a flock of sheep. As a shepherd counts his sheep, making each of them pass under his staff, so you review every living being, measuring the years and decreeing the destiny of every creature. We remain standing and continue on page 284.
Rosh Hashanah yikatenu, uvyom tzom kippur yekatenu. Rosh Hashanah yikatenu, uvyom tzom kippur yekatenu. Kama yavron v'chama yibareyon, mi yachye u'mi yamon, mi v'kitzo u'mi lo v'kitzo. Rosh Hashanah yikatenu, u'byom tzom kippur yechatenu. Rosh Hashanah yikatenu, u'byom tzom kippur yechatenu. Mi v'esh u'mi v'mayim, mi v'cheref u'mi v'chaya, mi v'rav u'mi v'tzama, mi v'ra'ash u'mi v'magefa. Rosh Hashanah yichatevu, u'vyom Tzom Kippur yechatemu. Rosh Hashanah yichatevu, u'vyom Tzom Kippur yechatemu. Mi v'chanika, mi v'skila, mi anuach u'mi anua, mi shaketu mi yitaref, mi shalev u'mi yityasar, mi ani u'mi yasher, mi shafel u'mi yarum. Uteshuvah,
Please continue silently. For those of you that have completed the Amidah, we continue on page 302.
אכילה ליל לפניו, אשאלה ממנו מענה לשון, אשר ביקר המשירה וזו. אביר רננות ביד מפעליו, לאדם מרחי לב, ומרניים מענה לשון, אדוני שפתי תפתח, ופי יגיד תהילתך. יהיו לי רצון אמרי פי, וגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Page 304.
Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'adon hakol Late Gedula Yotze Bereshit Shelo Asanu Ki Goye Aratzot Velo Samanu Kemishpechot Odama Shelo Sam Chelkeinu Kahem Vegoroleinu Kikochol Manak Vanachnu Karei Umishtachavim Umadim Lifnei Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
May be seated. We continue on page 310 with Areshet Zifatenu. May the prayers of our lips be pleasing to you, O God, who hears our shofar sounds, which we'll hear later today. May you lovingly accept our recitation of Malchuyot.
Areshet Zifatenu Yerav lefanecha Eram Benisa. Areshet Zifatenu Yerav lefanecha Eram Benisa. Vevinu mazin mabitu makshif Lekol tekiyateinu Ukabel berachamim uvratzon Seder seder shofroteinu.
Today is the birthday of the world. On this day, all the world's creatures stand before you in judgment, some as children, some as servants. If you look upon us as children, then pity us as parents pity children. If you look upon us as servants, then we depend on your graciousness when you judge us, O revered and holy God. We continue with Sim Shalom on page 334.
Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova U'Beracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael Echad. Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom. Barechenu, Avinu, Kulanu kechad be'or panecha, Ki be'or panecha notata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torat chayim ve'ahavat chesed u'tzedakah verachamim v'chayim v'shalom. Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova U'Beracha. V'tov b'necha levorech et amcho Yisrael ואת כל העמים ברבות ברבות ושלום. שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, בספר חיים לרעה ושלום ופרנסה טובה ייזכר לנחת לפניך אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים, לחיים טובים ולשלום.
Hayom Tam Seinu, page 336. Amen. Amen. היום תדרשנו לטובה. אמן. 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 היום תאמצנו אמן. היום תכתבנו לחיים טובים אמן. היום תשמע שבתנו אמן. היום תקבל ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו אמן. היום תתמכנו במין צדקך אמן. 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 היום תאמצנו אמן. 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 היום תאמצנו amen. We continue with Ein Kelohenu, page 340. Eloheinu, en Kadoneinu, en Kemakenu, en Kemoshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadoneinu, Michemakenu, Michemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Makenu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Makenu, Baruch Moshienu, Adal Eloheinu, Adal Adonenu, Adal Makenu, Adal Moshienu, Adal Shektiru Avatenu, Lefanecha Gdolei Asamim, Yadai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Yadai Yadai, Yai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Yadai Yadai, Yai da 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 da, Yadai Yadai, Yai da 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 da, Yadai Yadai, Yai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Yadai Yadai, Yai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Yai da 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 da, Please rise for Aleinu, page 342. Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויהו ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נטע שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומשה ויקרא בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים, ואלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשב אותה אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד. כי המלכות שלך היא למתלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz. V'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad. U'shema echad. U'shema echad.
May be seated. We continue, excuse me, with the Mourner's Kaddish on page 346. Any mourners and anyone observing your site, please unmute yourself and please rise for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitzgadal
David Kadash, Rabbi,
Rabba,
Yoma Divra Kute, Amlich Malchute, V'chaycho, Amechon, V'chay Dechol Beit Yisrael, Galah, Karivimru,
Amen. Yehei
Rabba Mevorach, Le'olam, Olam Eomaya, Yishtabach, B'yitzpa'ar, B'yitzpa'ar, Yitzhadar, B'yitzpa'ar, Le'ela, Mikol, Birchata, V'shachata, Tushbachata, Damiram, Be'amah, V'yiru,
Yehei
Shalom, Rabba, Maya, V'chaim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael,
Amen.
Oseh Shalom, Ramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael,
Amen. May be seated. We continue with Adon Olam, page 348.
Adon Olam, Hashem Allah, B'terem kol Yitzir nira, Le'et nasa, V'chitzu Azay melech Shemo nikra De'achareh Kichlot hakol Levado Yimloch nora Behu haya Behu veh Behu yeh B'tifara Behu echad Li'ein sheni Beonisi Umanusli Menakosi Beyumekra Beyaro Afkiruchi Beyedisha Meaira Beimruchi Giviati Adonali Meluira Adonai Hashem Allah B'terem kol Yitzini Le'ed nasa Le'chetzo kol Azai melech Shemo nikra
That was so beautiful watching everybody swaying to that Adon Olam and the beautiful melody. May it be your will, our God and God of our ancestors, that the new year bring us well-being and blessing. Inscribe us in the book of life, O God, and grant us in the new year a life of peace and goodness, a life of blessing, sustenance, and health, a life marked by true piety and the avoidance of sin, a life free from all shame and reproach, a life of abundance and honor, a life ennobled by love of Torah and reverence for you, a life in which all the worthy desires of our hearts will be fulfilled. I'm going to send you all off into your chat rooms for about 10 minutes. Hope to see you back here at 11:30 for our prayer concert with Yoel Sykes. Shana Tova. If you want to stay on, just stay on. You'll be automatically put into a chat room. Otherwise, you should just leave the Zoom. And I look forward to seeing you in a little while.